The SAS is the Special Forces regiment upon which all others are based. Few are tough enough to pass selection. But what does it take to survive once you make it into the Special Air Service? Using a series of dramatic scenarios, a team of hardened ex-SAS veterans have agreed to reveal the survival secrets that kept them alive. The commander of our four-man patrol is former SAS Sergeant Eddie Stone. With him is demolitions expert John McAleese, the first man on the balcony in the Iranian embassy siege. Additional firepower and expertise is provided by Johnny and Pete. We've had to protect their identities. Together, they'll show you how members of the world's most elite regiment fight and survive, and reveal just what it takes to wear this badge. What makes the SAS unique is their ability to act independently, to get in, get the job done, and get out before anyone realizes what has happened. In this series, we've seen them in a number of roles. But up until now, we've concentrated on the four-man team, the basic fighting unit of the SAS.
Now we're going to look at what happens when a full Sabre squadron goes into action, utilising the specialist infiltration and combat skills of the SAS.
The fictitious mission we've created is a special personnel extraction, in this case, to capture and remove a war criminal. The target, his residence in the heartlands of a fictional country with a terrorist-sponsored government. The operation will involve an insertion behind enemy lines, parachuting a patrol from air troop to recce the target. The rest of the squadron will infill by boat. After climbing and securing the cliffs, the main body of the squadron will advance to the target and carry out the abduction. For our fictitious mission, we're using a team of actors to make up the troops in the squadron. The SAS is made up of 4 Sabre combat squadrons. Each one is divided into 4 specialist troops: air, boat, mobility, and mountain. Air troop for silent, swift insertions. For this mission, we've added a new team member, Alec. He's a former Pathfinder, an elite parachute unit where a large part of selection and combat training is the same as in the SAS. Boat troop for assaults and insertion from water. Mountain troop, who reach the parts where no enemy would dare to go. And finally, mobility troop, trained for hit-and-run raids behind enemy lines. In our mission, they're also tasked with providing covering fire for the assault. John McAleese will be in charge of SF as they infill and exfil from the Oppo.
In this series, you come across a lot of phrases and terminology. Some obvious, some not.
Jimpy.
Pinky.
Ping.
Let's run through some of the ones you'll be hearing during this programme. Infill.
A means of infiltration.
Get in, do the job, get back out again.
Exfil.
A means of exfiltration from the target area.
Pinged.
You spotted somebody, you pinged them.
Coming from the radar noise. Ping.
Bumped.
Bumped. Contact.
Right, let's get on with it.
In our fictitious mission, air troop have been dropped behind enemy lines. Patrol Commander Eddie is first on the ground. He buries his parachute and then heads off for the first rendezvous.
I'm on location now, waiting for the rest of the team to come in. There's a gap of probably 50 to 60 metres between each person as they're coming in, so it will take them a little bit of time to move into this area, where I will pick them up. When they come in, I will then place them down all around the fence to form a protective barrier around our first RV point.
It'll be some time before Eddie knows whether all his patrol have survived the drop. These men have had to freefall from 35,000 feet and land in a hostile drop zone. all at night. Just some of the skills expected of air troop. Every SAS soldier is trained to make parachute drops. It is, after all, the Special Air Service. This, for most part, involves static line jumps, where the parachute opens automatically on leaving the plane. Air troop, however, are trained to master the art of free fall as well as using a parachute. It requires altogether more nerve and skill. During his time with the regiment, this was Eddie's speciality.
The main difference between air troop and the rest of the squadron is we are trained as a specialist infiltration skill in high-altitude parachuting.
There are two methods of high-altitude infiltration. They are known as hey-ho and hey-low. Hey-ho, or high-altitude opening, is generally the preferred option. After a short free fall, the parachute is opened. Using modern ram air parachutes, the soldier can silently glide themselves into the target.
Using the ram air parachute and the jet stream, you can insert across a border.
In hey-low, or high-altitude low opening, the troop free fall from as high as 35,000 feet, only opening their parachute at around 2,000 feet. It's swift and it's silent.
The main advantage of halo is that when you land on the ground, you'll all be within a very, very short distance of each other. With hey-ho, you can end up being spread out a good distance across the country.
But before they even step out of the plane, they have to check and double-check that they've got the right kit for the mission.
Helmet, obviously to protect the most important part of your body, your brain. Oxygen mask. The reason for the oxygen, if you're jumping at 35,000 feet, obviously there's very little oxygen there. Okay. Gets very cold up there, so it's very important you wear gloves, good thermal suit, main parachute, reserve parachute in the top. It's got a little tag on it. If that's not there, don't jump with that parachute. It's the main handle, reserve handle. This is where your equipment gets attached to. This strap is attached and pulls the oxygen bottle close in and tight to the leg. It's also used for holding the weapon in position. This equipment weighs about 45 pounds. When you've got a 120 pound Bergen on top of that, getting to the edge of the aircraft, pitch black at night, you've got to waddle to the edge and basically drop yourself off.
Free falling at 35,000 feet with weapons and a Bergen full of equipment would be suicidal if the trooper hadn't spent months training for it, mastering the technique.
What he's trying to do at this stage is create symmetry in all parts of his body. His head must be in an upright position. Because of the weight of his head, if he bends his head forward and he's looking down, he will start to tumble forward.
3.
If he wants to turn right and face into the group, all he has to do is bring in his right arm, and his body will automatically turn round to the right. He can do the same movements by using his legs. If he straightens his left leg, he will then spin to the right. When he's jumping, if we're jumping from 25,000 feet in an operation, then we will be wearing equipment. That is going to create more drag, so he will extend his arms out in the front of his body. If the Bergen moves position at any time, it can cause the free faller to start spinning. This is a very dangerous thing to happen. If you get into a spin when you leave the aircraft at 25,000 feet, you've got a long way down before your parachute's going to open, another 23,000 feet. By that time, you're going to be rotating faster than the eye can see. I have seen people landing on the ground with their eyes completely bloodshot because all the capillaries in their eyes have burst. So he must adjust his position to compensate for any movement in the Bergen. There is one other position you can use, which is cracking, and that enables you to move across the sky. A bit like Superman in some respects, but not quite the same. You're going to still hit the ground. And at 25,000 feet, he will be motoring along somewhere around 180 to 200 mile an hour.
When deployed, the ram air parachute quickly inflates. It then acts as a rigid wing. The trooper steers himself using left and right toggles towards the landing zone.
You want to turn left, pull down your left steering toggle. What that does, it shuts off the air to the left-hand side of the parachute, causing it to rotate around to the left.
As he approaches the ground, he has a new problem to consider. When to drop the heavy Bergen. For stability during freefall and the parachute descent, it's been strapped to the back of the legs.
Approximately 1,000 feet, we start looking for wind direction indicators. In other words, smoke coming out of chimneys, where there may be trees blowing, what direction the wind's coming from. He's got to land his parachute into wind.
As he comes into land, he slides his Bergen down to the end of his legs. To touch down safely, he has to release it onto a line. Timing is critical. If he lets go too early, it will act as a pendulum, causing the trooper to lose control.
10, 15 feet off the ground, he will flick the Bergen off his feet and let it land on the ground nice and gently. The reason for this is he may have equipment in there, might be a laser target marker, or maybe binoculars in there that we require for the operation. If he lets it hit the ground at high speed as he's coming into land, it can damage the equipment in the Bergen. When you're coming into land, you guide yourself into wind, flare the canopy down, it will shut off the air, but the canopy will sit back. And you should land on the ground nice and gently, if you do it properly.
Finally, the trooper has to hide his parachute before continuing with the rest of his mission. Eddie is waiting for the rest of his air troop patrol to arrive at the rendezvous near the landing site. The men have had to find their way individually from where they landed. Our drop has been a success. All members of the patrol are safely in position. They take a quick admin break, sorting themselves out whilst maintaining all-round defence.
Right, listen in, lads. This will be our first ERV, yeah? Here.
On the way to the target,
Okay.
Eddie will designate a number of ERVs, emergency rendezvous points.
This is in case, en route, we get bumped by the enemy. In other words, we have a contact with the enemy. The patrol splits, then they can get back to the emergency rendezvous point where we can re-establish what we're going to do, select a different route, and head off and try and carry on with the mission. I'm going to head off. Point. Number 2.
The next stage of the mission is the tab to target area.
Tab. Tactical advance to battle.
Going for a little walk, carrying the house on your back.
Each soldier is expected to have exceptional navigational skills, but to help plot the route to the target, they'll be using GPS, a global positioning system. It's a satellite-based navigation aid originally developed by the US military. It can pinpoint a user's location to within a few meters anywhere in the world. To do this, the handset needs a signal from at least 3 of 24 purpose-built satellites orbiting the Earth.
In this case here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 satellites showing. Gives me my grid reference, 222171. I'll get my map out. Okay, I've now located exactly where I am. I know where the target is. So when we set off on our route, that will tell me, after a period of time, how long it's taken me to cover a kilometre. So I can then work out from that how long it's going to take me to reach my target area.
The patrol moves out. Every one of them is an experienced soldier trained to use all kinds of navigational tools.
Don't forget, you must still be an excellent map reader. This is a useful tool, but you should never rely on it totally. Moving into an enemy position or moving into an area of operation isn't about head down, arse up and getting there as fast as you can. You've got to move tactically at all times. adapting different formations depending on what the country's like. When we're patrolling along, each person has their own arc of responsibility. In other words, they're covering a specific area.
Moving tactically is second nature to an SAS trooper. They know they could be bumped or compromised at any time when operating behind enemy lines. Over the next few days, Air Troop will establish an observation post near the target, note the enemy movements, and draw up a plan for the assault. Then, the next stage of the operation can begin. This will be the responsibility of Boat Troop. Their job is to get the squadron ashore if there's an approach from water.
2/3 of the planet is water. Therefore, in most operations for its insertion, there is always an amphibious slant or angle.
They are trained in sea navigation, can pilot almost any small craft, are expert divers, and may even have to be handy with a surfboard.
Amphibious operations is quite complicated in that we're in a medium where men can be drowned before they even get to the start line to go to war.
Members of the Boat Troop will pilot the craft that will carry in the rest of the squadron. Their job is to get them ashore safe and dry.
A wet, cold soldier will not be thinking about the operation, he'll be thinking about getting dry.
Aboard the boats, the SAS often wear a waterproof dry suit called an ISBO, Immersion Suit Boating Operations. This is worn over their DPMs.
DPM, Disruptive Pattern Material, camouflage.
The boat commander is responsible for safety. Zips can be a particular danger. If left undone, the suit can fill with water. Result, the soldier who is carrying heavy equipment is dragged under. The SAS use an assault craft called a Gemini. It's inflatable, so it can be easily deployed at sea. Everything required for a mission has to be stowed on this craft. They use special watertight bags. As well as carrying the Bergens and other equipment, the bag can be filled with air and used as a flotation aid. Useful if you need to swim into shore. This is then clipped to the boat. Weapons and equipment are stowed and secured to the boat, so that in the event of a capsize, hands are free to right the craft and the patrol's ability to fight is not lost to the sea. Sea conditions, tides and currents are all factors the boat commander will have weighed up in the planning. He'll select a landing point from the weather forecast, charts, and what's the safest option for the squadron at the time. In our fictitious mission, the squadron will launch from a mothership in neutral waters and land at low tide when the beach is exposed. If time and conditions allow, he may recce the coastline in advance for a suitable site. It is vital to choose a landing site with plenty of cover, such as rocky outcrops. But a beach surrounded with heavy rocks can prove to be treacherous in stormy weather. In the meantime, Air Troop have tabbed from the drop zone to the target area, along the way pointing out emergency rendezvous points. For the past 2 days, they've been watching the target from an OP, observation post. The SAS are expert in covert intelligence gathering. Central to this is the role of the OP.
By the front gate.
Long-term OPs involve digging in and effectively living in a hole in the ground for days, maybe weeks. During counter-terrorist operations in urban areas, there will be more hiding spots. But again, the soldier will be expected to eat, sleep, and go to the toilet at his post. This is called hard routine. In our mission, They've got to gather as much information as they can about guards and points of entry
Looks like they're just changing over.
before rendezvousing with the rest of the squadron in a couple of days. This is familiar work for Alec, who has come from another of the British Army's elite forces, the Pathfinders.
Basically, we're the eyes and ears of the brigade commander, and what would be used for us to go and recce and secure drop zones for the incoming troops for the relevant operation.
Pathfinder selection is similar to the SAS, the main difference being they don't train in bodyguarding and counter-terrorism.
The Pathfinders is green soldiering to a very high level. Initially, what we require is a very good basic infantry skill to get through the selection. Once you're successful in that, you then progress to mountain skills, mobility skills, jungle skills and desert skills. We'd operate in obviously 4 to 6 man teams, pretty much the same as the regiment. So to that extent, yes, we do operate on our own.
After a couple of days with eyes on the building, Air Troop Commander Eddie reports to his boss on ship that our target is not heavily guarded. They continue to gather intelligence for the op. Some way back, the troop has established a lying up position. Here they can rest between shifts at the OP. Lighting a fire and cooking are strictly forbidden. Nobody is left on their own in the OP.
It's good they've got a bit slacker over the past couple of days, eh?
Operating in the buddy-buddy system is very, very important within the regiment. What I mean by that is that no one is ever left on their own. You don't put the guy in the OP by himself, he's in there with someone else. If somebody goes for a crap, then somebody goes with him. So at all times, each person has got protection with him if he is occupied doing another task.
As Eddie finishes his shift, another trooper takes over.
Each person in the OP will change over 1 man at a time, so there's always somebody who's in the OP who's been watching the place for a period of time, so one person there has been watching the place for a few hours before the next guy takes over. And you'll do that rotation constantly during the mission.
Okay, Jimmy, what's happening is obviously there's quite a lot of movement taking place now. Okay, so we've seen the target quite a few times. The guards there are all completely undisciplined.
But the OP can only reveal so much about the target. There is a final piece of reconnaissance that has to be done before an assault goes ahead. This is CTR, or Close Target Recce. Over the next couple of nights, Alec will get a look at the areas not visible from the OP. An infantryman is trained to be aware of what is on the ground in front of him. If he doesn't, the consequences could be disastrous. Mines and booby traps are always a constant danger. The CTR should reveal whether there are any dangers on the approach to the target. Night vision sights amplify the ambient light found even in the darkest places. Once Alec has made his observations, he has to withdraw without leaving too many traces. The easiest way is to use a classic escape and evasion trick: go back the way you came in. Writing down notes is time-consuming, so at a safe distance, he records his observations. In our fictitious scenario, he then moves around to approach the target from another direction to get a 360-degree view of the target. Having gathered enough intelligence, Eddie has radioed the ship to commence with the next phase of the operation. With part of the air troop, he'll now head for the pickup point on the coast. Some way out to sea, the rest of the squadron are fast approaching their insertion point. They slow their engines to reduce noise. As with land operations, the boat troop pilots use hand signals to communicate. 400 to 600 meters out, just beyond small arms range, the boats link. Again, like a land operation, this is their final rendezvous, the FRV. In our fictitious mission, Eddie's patrol have now secured the cliff overlooking the beach. For our mission, the boat troop commander coordinates the landing. The plan is for 4 Geminis to hit the beach simultaneously, disembarking the troops, who will then move inland. Even though the cliff is guarded by air troop, a boat troop advance recce party are sent in to secure the beach. When all is well, the signal is sent back to the other boats for the rest of the squadron to come in. Next off the boats is Mountain Troop. Mountain Troop are the extreme sportsmen of the regiment. As with all these disciplines, every trooper is expected to have some climbing experience. Mountain Troop train with the best climbers in the world for anything up to a year. Playing the part of an SAS mountain trooper is Shane Oley. He is an experienced civilian climber who has helped to design specialist gear for the military. Although the basic kit is pretty much the same, whoever you are.
The most important things are your climbing shoes. Now these have a sticky rubber on the soles, which allow you to grip the rock and give you much more sensitivity than your army boots. Another important piece of kit is a chalk bag. Now this contains magnesium carbonate, which absorbs the sweat on your fingertips and again allows you to grip the rock with much more security. Also, when you're climbing, you're going to want to access the equipment on your harness. So take off the jacket. This helps freedom of movement as well, and you can access this equipment. Now, some of the most important things are your carabiners. These allow you to clip a rope into them and secure yourself to the cliff. In addition, you've got items such as these, which are camming devices. Now these, you can pull the trigger to retract the cams, slot them into a crack and secure yourself. Again, you'd clip the rope through the carabiner. Finally, you have these, which are nuts. Similar to the camming devices, you'd wedge them in a crack, secure them like this, and then you'd clip the rope through the carabiner, and that will secure you to the cliff. Now, I'm going to take off these boots and put on my climbing shoes so that I'm ready to climb.
Mountain Troop patrol in. This would usually take place under cover of darkness, so once they have the all-clear signal, the troop commander can place sentries around the cliff. The lead climber can then prepare to ascend.
Okay, I'm going to use a climbing rope to secure myself whilst climbing. I'm going to call my B-layer across.
The B-layer will remain at the bottom of the cliff. Using a special belay device attached to a safety harness, he will control Shane's line as he climbs.
So if I was to fall off, he'll stop the rope sliding through and prevent me from hitting the ground. Okay, I've now checked that he's ready.
Shane is lead climbing, laying a line to secure himself as he ascends. This is dangerous enough on loose rocks like this, but imagine doing it at night, with the very real danger of being shot at.
Straight away, you know from climbing on this kind of rock that it's going to be a little bit loose, so you want to be careful where you place your feet, what you pull on. Move carefully, slowly, normally trying to maintain a few points of contact all the time. Therefore, if you did slip, you'd have the maximum chance of holding yourself. Right, now that I'm getting some distance off the ground, I'm going to look to place some protection to keep myself safe, and I can see quite a good bit there, so I'll probably be able to place a nut. So I'll select quite a large nut, maybe in behind there. Clip it with a carabiner, pull up some loose rope and secure myself. Again, look up, look for the best route, carry on climbing. On rock which is like this, you've got to be really careful because it's a little bit suspect again, so quite often you may thump it like this to test how strong it is. You can tell by the noise that it makes. Okay, and we're now at the top of the cliff. I can indicate to the B layer that I'm safe, and I'll move back, secure the line, we'll take it from there.
Now lines can be dropped for the rest of the squadron. On a mission, the SAS have to carry absolutely everything they need. From medical supplies to the exact number of mortar bombs required. The Bergens alone can weigh more than 120 pounds. A vast weight that has to be got up the cliff by pure brute strength. Another indicator of how fit the average trooper has to be.
As each member of the squadron reaches the top of the cliff, I will meet them and I will then send them off with one of my guys to a pre-designated area to give us a 360-degree arc of protection around our foothold on the cliff. When we've got the guys up, we will then start bringing up the heavy equipment.
This position at the cliff top is known as the operational baseline. To get to this point, the squadron have used the skills of 3 of their troops. But what about the 4th? Mobility, John McAleese's specialist troop. It's not practical to use vehicles on our operation, so John has been given the responsibility of providing covering fire for the assault. Different theatres demand different requirements. Mobility troops are the ones who keep the squadron moving. Many of the regiment's earliest missions in the deserts of North Africa during World War II were mobility-based. Back then they used American jeeps, but the vehicle most closely associated with the regiment is affectionately known as the Pinky.
Pinky.
A term used all the time for the Land Rover 110.
The reason the vehicles are painted pink is, may sound funny, but in the desert, when you get used against the backdrop of the sand, they can't be seen.
Although Land Rovers have been used by the regiment since World War II, the original Pink Panther, the Pinky, came into use in the 60s.
Basically, it's just a Land Rover chassis with lots of extras added to it. Spare wheel on the front of the vehicle rather than on the bonnet, because in the olden days, the spare wheel was on here, and if you'd in the trouble engine, you had to take the wheel off first before you could lift the bonnet. Believe it or not, it's quite handy if you've got to push in the vehicle, you've got the tyre in front, you don't damage the other vehicle. You've got the old smoke pots in the front, either side. You've got these, you've got 3 in either corner of the vehicle. These can be fired out from the front or the rear of the vehicle and give you a smoke screen.
As well as the smoke pots, the early Pinky had 2 machine guns, mounted rear and front. It also carried a rocket launcher, storage for grenades, mines and rifles.
All this is just for carrying a weapon. In the olden days it'd be an SLR or something. Sitting there, it's out of the way, so it's not clattering about. This one here, carry no grenades. Yep.
This makes it a self-contained assault vehicle with a vast range over any terrain.
This magic thing here is a built-in compass. Sand channels designed to get you if you're bogged in the sand. In the back here, you've got 2 big tanks. Yep. Basically 50 gallon in each one, so you're carrying an extra 100 gallon of fuel. I mean, you appreciate you've got all that fuel, you've got all the weight. I mean, one good shot, the whole thing would just blow up. Yeah, basically it was a 4-wheel bomb.
This Land Rover was eventually replaced by vehicles whose fuel was less vulnerable. In fact, there was quite a lot of room for improvement on the original model.
Truthfully, they're a pain. It's hard work. No power steering, no nothing. Heavy, cumbersome. All the weight's at the top.
Despite its shortcomings, the old Pinky was considered a tough off-road vehicle that, thanks to its simple engineering, was easy to fix.
They're one of the first four-wheel sort of vehicles that were actually on the market, and they've done their job. You know, they've served the regiment proudly, I think, over the years. I mean, the modern one's a lot better. That is nice. Yeah, that's power. Yeah.
Modern Pinkies are less vulnerable, pack a more powerful punch, and with their V8 engines go faster and further.
But even then, they're still top heavy. So if you are out driving them, you've actually got to use the motorbikes to actually wreck your route a lot of the time prior to it.
Trail bikes have also been used as a way to launch hit-and-run strikes behind enemy lines, but their most common use is for reconnaissance. Mobility Troop is expected to ride and fix almost anything.
Most guys that are in Mobility Troop become good drivers over the years anyway, you know, because they're driving in different terrains, where it's desert, Arctic, sort of mountainous, jungle, you know. This, basically, it's a four-wheel motorbike.
The SAS will experiment with any vehicle, as long as it's fit for the job. This all-terrain vehicle combines the speed of the bike with the adaptability of the Land Rover.
Just makes it more of a stable platform for transporting stores, fuel, ammo. You could put an injured man on a stretcher in front of you, and then the same in the back, you could mount the stretcher and carry an injured man.
No trooper is expected to have a single set of skills. On our mission, Mac will utilize another of his specializations. Up till now, we have seen how the various specialist troops have worked together to achieve the prime objective of the mission. In our scenario, the extraction of a war criminal from his fictitious terrorist homeland. Air Troop have parachuted behind enemy lines, recce'd the target, and then tabbed into the insertion point and secured the cliff overlooking it. Boat Troop have delivered the squadron safely to the beach, and Mountain Troop have scaled the cliff, leading the way for the rest of the force to bring themselves and their equipment to the operational baseline. From here, mortars and heavy machine guns will provide covering fire for the whole mission, and ensure that the squadron have a well-defended point to exfil from. Mac and Mobility Troop have set up the SF, or Sustained Fire Line, that employs a weapon whose pedigree matches only that of the Pinky in SAS history, the Gympie.
Gympie, GPMG.
General Purpose Machine Gun, otherwise known as the General.
The General Purpose Machine Gun has been used in the regiment since 1957 and has been involved in every single SAS action. It fires ball or standard NATO 7.62 rounds. At regular intervals, some of these are tipped with a tracer paint that starts to burn at 70 metres and continues for nearly a kilometre.
Tracers, so target indications, so you can see where it's going. I mean, you're firing at night, see where all the rounds are landing. Scared you to the enemy. If you had enemy troops, say, following you up, if it was a withdrawal, they're 1,000 metres away, 1,100 metres away, they think they're pretty safe, and then you open up with one of these, yeah, you're going to keep their heads down. Rather than hitting one spot at one time, or all the time, it's given a cone of fire, which is basically about 30 metres by about 8 metres. Yeah, so anything within that cone of fire is going to get chewed to bits. Talking thousands of rounds a minute, if need be. You've got accurate decimation, realistically.
Bullets from a Gympie fan out to create a cone of fire. By interlocking these cones from the SF line, it creates what is known as a beaten zone. This is an area that the enemy will find impossible to move through.
You may wonder why we know that these weapons are going to fire when we actually get them set up. That is because before we go on any mission, we will take all the weapons that we're going to use and test fire them to make sure they're in perfect working order.
The baseline for the operation is now in place. Supporting the machine guns are a battery of 81mm mortars, already locked on to the escape route. Down on the beach, members of boat troop guard the exfil point. The rest of the squadron can now move forward to the target. 4 kilometers away in the wood overlooking the target, Alec waits for the squadron to arrive. Before they get there, he will build a scale model of the area using materials that are close to hand. This will help Eddie and the squadron's officer in command formulate a detailed plan. It's vital that the model accurately reflects the surrounding area.
We carry a model kit with us, and a model kit is made up of, as you can see here, ribbons. We've got various bits of Fablon card, each with one side clear so we can put in any additional positions that might need to be put in. Okay, it's important that we do this. This is approximately a square kilometre around the target area. The target's located away to the southwest, of course. We're away to the north at the moment. Building in the features, because there's nothing worse than guys coming to look at a model which isn't to scale or doesn't have the correct relief. Here we can see the river coming to the south here. The ground rises away from the river, so this is what we're building up at the moment. So we're just going to put a wood in here in a minute, and then we'll continue back. The target area itself is obviously down here, and we'll put the buildings in there very shortly.
Alec has gone to incredible lengths to get the model right. What couldn't be seen from the OP has been mapped during the close target recce. This way, the squadron will get an all-round bird's-eye view of our target.
If we don't build a model, you're in danger of leading people into an attack blind. You can tell them anything you want, but it takes a very able bunch of guys to remember every single detail without showing them previously on a model. And there should be no reason why there is not a model available.
If you've got a good model and it's well prepared, then you can show everyone exactly how the land lies and what the target looks like on the ground. If you try to explain that without a model, you'll be there all day.
The squadron arrive at the final rendezvous. With them now is the OC, the officer in command. He's ultimately in charge of the squadron and will decide if or when they go in. Eddie's role as the air troop commander is to brief the squadron and present an assault plan.
The first thing I'm going to do when I get the rest of the squadron into our position, I'm going to show them and run through the model with them so that each person has a general idea of what the ground looks like around the target area. This will be specifically orientated towards the OC, the boss. I'll let him know exactly what's going on. There's a road running north-south. There's a small track which leads into the target area running west to east. This is the road that's used when they're changing over the sentries down at the target, yeah? Every 24 hours the sentries come down the road, change over, back out.
The target is not heavily guarded, but they have an extra danger to contend with. Nearby is an army base that could mobilize a quick response force, QRF.
Let's go, come on, let's go, keep moving, go!
The army camp is about 3 kilometres from target, so we've got to get in there quick, get the job done, and out of there before they can react to what's happening at the target.
Eddie has identified a blind spot on our target. The squadron will approach from this area and split into 2, entering from the front of the building on 2 sides. After having an eyes on the target himself, the OC is happy with the plan and leaves Eddie to fill in the details.
Okay guys, we've just been over the plan with Eddie. I'll hand you over in a second and he can go through the detailed tasks with you.
At this stage, the OC is going to defer to me because I've been on the ground, had a good look at the area, so basically he is going to then defer to me and I will give the orders for the main assault. Right, okay lads.
Eddie assigns everyone a role. Elements of mobility and boat troop are back at the exfil point, providing covering fire. He posts 2 of the air troop on the road overlooking the track to our target.
Your task, to cover that road in case we get held up at the target area and their QRF comes in. Start taking them out. Take the 66 with you to take out any vehicles that's driving down that track.
The SAS use lightweight anti-tank weapons to up their firepower. The Law 66 is widely used. It's a one-off use weapon that is extremely effective against soft-skinned targets like unarmoured vehicles. A trooper may carry several, but he has to know exactly how to operate the weapon system.
Whilst on exercise once with a unit which will remain nameless, as the person was opening the weapon, it was jamming. So stupidly, he took it, placed it onto his knee, held it here, and cocked the weapon. As he cocked it, he pressed the firing button at the same time. The weapon went off, the actual high explosive round went up in the air, but the back blast from this weapon chopped the guy's leg off. Very, very dangerous weapon. Because it's small, it's easy to turn around, point it at people. Place the weapon on the shoulder, aim at the target, bang. Take the weapon, throw it away, because it's no use to you anymore.
The Law 80 is heavier and will cut through the armour of main battle tanks at a range of 500 metres. But the bigger the launcher, the greater the risks to the men nearby.
Anyone who stood in the rear blast area of this weapon within 20 to 30 metres will be severely injured. It's a recoilless weapon and all the propulsion from the weapon comes out the rear. So you must make sure that's what he's doing when he's taking the covers off. He checks to the rear to make sure there's none of his guys behind him.
Back at the woods, Eddie continues the briefing for our fictitious assault. During the attack itself, 2 men will stay at the OP.
And they're going to keep eyes on the target while we're moving in.
Air troop, who have the best knowledge of the target, will lead the rest of the squadron in.
I will lead you forward, down, through the wood, into the west side of the target. As soon as we get the go-ahead for the boss, then we quickly come around from both sides and make entry through into the target. You want to be here, set up, ready to go in exactly 40 minutes from now. So get your gear, get your weapons, check your weapons, all the normal kit. Be here, formed up, ready to march. Let's go. Each of the guys who are going to do the op will then feed through the observation post so that every single person prior to the assault has a good eye on the target area. Don't forget your model kit, mate, yeah?
The squadron will leave their Bergens in the wood, under guard. They can now advance to FIBA.
FIBA, forward edge of the battle area.
Basically where all the fighting takes place.
It's a slow, silent approach to the target. They put up defensive positions to cover the withdrawal. Speed and surprise will give them the edge. That and an impressive selection of weaponry. The M16 is the regiment's standard assault weapon. Each trooper carries 5 30-round magazines and 300 to 400 rounds of extra ammunition. He may also have a 203 grenade launcher attached to the weapon. Every soldier carries a pistol as backup, either a Browning 9mm or a Sig Sauer. The Mini-Me is a lightweight machine gun that fires 800 rounds a minute. They'll also take hand grenades. The point of the operation is not to kill as many of the enemy as possible, but to abduct the subject and survive the mission.
We're going to sneak in there as quietly as we can, get as close to the target area as possible. Very, very similar to a counter-terrorist operation. Get in as close as you can before going noisy. Grab the prisoner and take him away as quickly as we can back to the exfil point.
Once they've made the decision to go, there's no turning back.
What's happening? I can hear shots. Get them round you now.
It looks like mayhem, but in fact, it's a well-rehearsed drill. Each trooper knows his role. The SAS use a variety of grenades, depending on the requirements of the mission. The British Army standard is the L2A2. With a killing radius of 20 meters, the dangers to your own men in close quarters are obvious. They use them to clear an outbuilding. But the enemy quick response force has been alerted sooner than Eddie anticipated.
Get on the floor now!
The ferocity of the assault leaves the criminal too confused and scared to resist.
The first thing you've got to do is control him. And you do that by being very aggressive towards him.
Down! Bag him!
Put a bag in his head, plastic cuff his hands. He'll at this stage be terrified, he'll be frightened, he'll become passive.
Eddie takes his papers. They may contain important intelligence. The enemy are only minutes away. Their job now is to get the prisoner to the coast as quickly as possible. They must avoid a pitched battle with the enemy. It's down to Alec overlooking the track to deal with the fast-approaching QRF, and if necessary, buy the squadron the time to get clear. The rocket launcher team join the withdrawal. The squadron have been able to get away from the target, but there are more enemy following up. The SAS don't want to break off and engage the enemy directly, so the mortar teams, set up on the cliff 4 kilometers away, open fire. The 81mm mortar is effectively the SAS's personal artillery. It's accurate to within a range of 5 kilometers. In our scenario, several teams are deployed at the start line. The fire of each mortar section is controlled by a forward observer, who radios back to the mortar position, directing the fall of bombs onto the target. Using a ranging marker, the first thing the mortar teams do is aim or lay onto the target. This British weapon is one of the most successful mortar designs in the world. It's an SAS favourite and was used extensively in the Falklands.
What we'll have done prior to the mission taking place is we'll pick and mark pre-designated points in our route back where we can call in the mortar fire to. So the mortar fire controller, he'll observe and he will call in the mortar fire when the enemy is approaching that position. He will ask the mortars to fire one round. That is a ranger. As that round comes in and explodes, he can then notify the mortar baseline is what adjustments is required for them to start putting down effective fire on the enemy force which is chasing us.
With an average rate of fire of 8 high explosive rounds per minute, the killing range of the weapon is dictated by the softness of the ground. The C2 sight is used by armed forces around the world and is generally recognised as the most accurate for aiming mortars and machine guns at non-visible targets. This constantly readjusting bombardment means that the squadron can withdraw unimpeded. Eventually, the spotter will also fall back. Eddie and his group have reached the SF line. They now have to get the prisoner down the cliff.
Right, John, that's 24 trip complete. Once the last guys are through.
Getting a blindfolded and disorientated man to abseil down a cliff is not easy, even if he wanted to go. so Eddie will control his descent using a figure-of-8 descender. There's no time to worry whether the prisoner is comfortable. They have to get him down quickly. As the enemy close in, the SF line will have to open fire, but they can't do this until the rest of the squadron passes through their position. Before the prisoner can be lowered, Eddie abseils to the bottom of the cliff where he will control the descent. The last of the squadron crosses the SF line, including the mortar spotters. Now the Jimpies can play their part. Devastating combination of mortar and sustained machine gun fire means the enemy are stopped in their tracks, allowing the squadron to get over the cliffs and into the boats. Finally, the SF teams disable their weapons and withdraw before the enemy realize what has happened. Our fictitious mission is almost over. When the squadron are all on the boats, Eddie could call in a naval bombardment to destroy the position at the cliff top. An SAS squadron is unique amongst British Army units because it can go into operation with almost no assistance. From amphibious landings to airdrops, all eventualities are covered. Supplies, ammunition, intelligence, logistics are all dealt with within the squadron. On top of that, every soldier has to be an excellent infantryman. It's like having the combined skills of a small army in a unit of less than 100 men.
All of these skills joined together makes the SAS a formidable fighting force, able to operate in any terrain, under any conditions. Job done, in the boats, back to the mothercraft, in time for an egg banjo and a brew.
Banjo, as an egg banjo.
That's 2 pieces of bread with an egg between it.
An instrument played by George Formby.
In the next programme, we'll follow a soldier as he goes through SAS selection. It takes supreme physical fitness, a sharp mind, and the stamina to keep on going. If he passes that, then he'll have to survive a further 2 years continuation training.
A lot of it is mental toughness, you know, and you've got to have that mental toughness.
The regiment then becomes his life, often at the cost of relationships and family.
If you're fragile in any way, you'll go off your head, you'll never survive. You're going to end up killing somebody else or killing yourself.
Selection, continuation, and life after the regiment. Next time on SAS Survival Secrets.